You know what? I don't really pay attention to all that. I think for me, every game is a big game for us. I think that you have to.
In the heart of Connecticut, inside the walls of Mohegan Sun Arena, a clash was unfolding that felt far bigger than just another regular season game. The seats trembled with applause as the Fever and the Sun stepped onto the hardwood, each possession, each dribble already thick with storylines waiting to be written. And at the center of it all, Aaliyah Boston, the pride of Worcester, Massachusetts, returning close to her roots, determined to etch her presence into the fabric of this contest. From the opening tip, the game carried the rhythm of battle. The ball was lofted into the air, spinning slowly under the arena lights, and it became the symbol of opportunity. Who would seize it first? Who would claim the tempo? Odyssey Sims pounced, waiting for the ball to trickle into her grasp, and in one sudden burst, she elevated to the rim, carving out the first brushstroke on the night's canvas with a smooth 2. The Fever weren't just here to play. They were here to declare. Avery, darting like a blade off a screen, looked for daylight, but Charles had her covered. Indiana settled into their defensive shell, shifting bodies, arms, and energy like a single organism. The Sun tried to find rhythm, but the Fever's zone pulsed with defiance. A quick kick-out became a costly error. Kelsey Mitchell read it like a seasoned thief, intercepting with predatory precision. In a flash, she exploded into transition, a 2-on-1 forming, Sims soaring for another 2 and drawing the foul. The momentum was in Indiana's grasp, and already their intensity had drawn blood. What made this Fever team dangerous wasn't just individual brilliance, it was how quickly they learned to sync as one. With Sims orchestrating, with Mitchell's eyes always hunting for an edge, and with Boston anchoring the paint like an immovable wall, Indiana carried themselves with the swagger of a group that knew it belonged. Odyssey Sims didn't just check in to fill minutes. She altered the temperature of the court. With her energy, with her relentless probing, she figured out the Sun's defense on the fly, dismantling it one drive at a time. And then came Barkley, feeding the inbound. The ball found Mabry, who rose for the jumper. The shot seemed destined for the net until Boston crashed the glass, her timing just a half beat off. Yet even when she mistimed, she refused to surrender. She extended again, blocking Marrow with authority, as if reminding everyone in the arena that nothing would come easy at her expense. Each possession with Boston was not just about size and skill, it was about the psychology of intimidation. Lexi Hull joined the defensive masterpiece with her hustle. She fought through mismatches, poked balls loose, and refused to concede even a single inch. Her quickness disrupted angles, her anticipation forced errors, and her fingerprints became etched on the game in ways that numbers could never fully capture. Hull wasn't just playing defense. She was writing a manifesto of effort. The Fever carried humor in their spirit too, lightening the weight of the grind. The broadcasters chuckled over a cup of coffee comment, but on the floor, Odyssey. Sims was anything but lighthearted. She played like a woman possessed, like a rookie reborn in a veteran's body. Fresh legs, fearless heart. Each possession felt like her personal mission to bend the game in her favor. The energy wasn't confined to the hardwood. It rippled through the commentary, through the fans who filled the arena, through every gasp that followed a blocked shot or a daring drive. Even mentions of football season approaching couldn't dull the focus on what was happening in this battle. The Fever were painting a masterpiece, possession by possession, in the heart of summer basketball. Boston, always chiseling for space, finally muscled her way into the paint and dropped in her first points of the afternoon. For the Sun, this was a nightmare scenario, because when Boston gets going, when her body becomes both scalpel and hammer, she forces defenses to unravel. Her ability to draw fouls, her physical dominance, her soft hands around the rim. She was the kind of player who could tilt the floor's balance all by herself. Turnovers began to mount for Connecticut. Their fifth giveaway sparked another. Fever fast break, And again it was Hull making the play, snaking around, forcing the turnover, diving for loose balls like her jersey depended on it. Coach Christie's sides had spoken before the game about her team's ability to find another gear. And here it was, unfolding like prophecy. Indiana's tenacity wasn't just theory, it was reality. It was a storm brewing with each minute. The Sun tried to cage Mitchell, using their length to stifle her rhythm, but even then she found ways to manipulate the defense. She stopped on a dime, pulled up in transition, and used hesitation like a sword. Her basketball IQ glowed through the hardwood. Even when shots didn't fall, her decision-making carried a weight that kept defenses guessing, and that unpredictability opened doors for her teammates. Howard, battling foul trouble, remained relentless. Despite the whistles, she became everywhere at once, cleaning glass, diving into passing lanes, sprinting down the floor. When Mitchell threaded her a no-look dime, Howard bulldozed down the runway and finished through contact. 11 points, then 13. The basket seemed to widen for her as she found her rhythm, each finish punctuated by a primal scream of determination. The Fever weren't just fighting, they were flowing. Avery attacked the rim with new wrinkles, surprising everyone with her shiftiness. Known for her three-point marksmanship, she revealed another weapon, the fearless drive. Each cut to the rim added another dimension to Indiana's offense. Boston took her cues from that aggression, pushing tempo, charging the lane like a freight train. When the defense closed, she recalibrated, setting up shop in the half court, searching for mismatches like a hunter sniffing out prey. Yet sometimes even the great ones stumble. A turnover in traffic reminded everyone that this game, as much as it was a story of brilliance, was also a story of mistakes, of humanity written across the hardwood. Still, the Fever remained unshaken. Every possession carried the feel of survival. The Sun pressed, clawed, tried to wrestle back control. But Indiana answered with firepower, with resiliency, with the kind of stubbornness that defines champions. And then came the shot. Mitchell, quiet for much of the half, stepped into her. Rhythm rose beyond the arc, and finally, mercifully, drilled her first three. The net snapped, the bench erupted, and you could feel the exhale. Kelsey Mitchell was on the board, and for Indiana, that meant the storm was about to get louder. The first half closed like a fist, tight and tense. Connecticut had moments of brilliance, but the Fever refused to bow. Each hustle play, each rebound, each deflection told the story of a team unwilling to let go. Camp Day may have been celebrated earlier in the season, but this felt like Camp Day all over again. Laughter, chaos, and the unshakable energy of youth fueling something far greater than just a basketball game. This was the Fever's essence. Tenacity, resilience, unbreakable will. And yet, as the buzzer sounded, it was only halftime. The war was only half written. The Sun believed they still had the firepower to extinguish Indiana's flame, but the Fever carried in their veins the promise of another gear, another storm waiting to erupt. Kelsey Mitchell had tasted her rhythm. Aaliyah Boston had planted her flag in the paint. Odyssey Sims had carved her imprint across every transition, and Lexi Hull had written a textbook on effort. The story wasn't finished. It was only beginning. Because the Fever weren't just trying to survive in this arena. They were trying to rewrite destiny. The second half began not as a continuation, but as a rebirth. What the Fever had carved in the first half was impressive. A showcase of fight, of willpower, of flashes of brilliance. But what was about to unfold was something else entirely. It wasn't just a basketball game anymore. It was transformation. It was fire turning into an inferno. Connecticut's crowd roared, their voices heavy with belief that the Sun would pull away. But Indiana answered with resistance. Edwards came out assertive, testing the Fever defense. That's when veteran Brianna Turner, the proud product of Notre Dame, reminded everyone that heart often outweighs height. She stood firm, her defense unyielding, her presence cutting off angles and smothering space. A defensive wall disguised in human form. And from defense came opportunity. Kelsey Mitchell, with her deliberate footwork, carved through two defenders, her body weaving like a sculptor's chisel carving marble. 11 points now and growing. For Fever fans watching, it wasn't just points. They were witnessing a lineup many hadn't imagined at the start of the year. Odyssey Sims newly signed, Boston establishing herself as a cornerstone, Hull emerging as a force of grit. The Fever were not the same team they had been months ago. They had changed, evolved, transformed into something unexpected and beautifully dangerous. Mitchell pressed further. Again, she knifed through defenders, slipping between arms and bodies like water through cracks in stone. The basket gave way and the lead shortened. She wasn't waiting for momentum to come her way. She was dragging it into Indiana's corner, possession by possession. Odyssey Sims, still only in her third game in a Fever uniform, brought artistry to the floor. A crossover dribble that made defenders hesitate, a spin move that twisted time itself, and then the floater, soft, delicate, poetic, dropping in as though guided by destiny. Sims wasn't just adjusting to this team, she was electrifying it. Every dribble whispered that she was here to stay, that her presence meant Indiana's fight had gained another soldier. But basketball, like life, never flows one way. As the quarter wound down, Lan nailed a three at the buzzer, the Sun stretching their lead back to double digits. The crowd erupted, Mohegan Sun Arena shaking with renewed hope. The Fever stared at the scoreboard, but what stared back was not defeat. It was challenge, and challenge has always been the birthplace of greatness. Hull responded. Breaking loose, running the lane with fearless intent, she finished at the rim, silencing the crowd just enough to remind them Indiana was not done, not even close. Mitchell answered again. Reading the defense, punishing reckless closeouts, she launched from deep and connected. But as the crowd gasped, she clutched her leg. For a heartbeat, time froze. Was this the moment everything unraveled? Could the Fever survive without their engine, their flamethrower, their scorer who had turned games into fireworks? But Mitchell stood tall. She wasn't finished. She wasn't even close. Boston returned to her element, backing down Hartley in the paint. Each step was deliberate, like tectonic plates shifting. She sealed position, carved space, and dropped it in. Her presence was immovable, her post-work unstoppable. It wasn't just 2 points, it was a reminder that Indiana had weapons everywhere. The Sun tried to match, but Mitchell erupted. Launching again from beyond, this time with a defender's hand brushing against her arm, she sank it. 25 points now.